Here.
Rob Lewandowski.
Here.
DeAndrea making it here. I'm alive and well. Bob Doan.
Here.
Al Regina.
Here.
There he is. Ken Peterson.
Ken, here.
Good morning, Curtis.
Good morning, Tony.
And Bob Don.
Present.
Pretty good. We got everybody present and accounted for. As we are accustomed to do, we will invite Janita and Terry Jo to give us their summary of what's been going on in the last month, which we see is one item was opened and nothing has been changed in other applications.
Hang on. On the report, there is one file that is closed, and it's the result of a legal action. The report was sent up to legal on the file, and Mr. Mina.
It's an interesting comment there because later on we're going to have that name on another issue.
Okay. I sent the report to legal from my investigator, and legal went and did a settlement agreement. It looks like he surrendered his license. Any additional information would have to come from legal on the file, because once it goes to legal, unless they need us to testify in the matter before you, they handle it from that point on.
So there's no indication of the time of surrender, is there?
Mr. Chairman, you would have to ask legal, and I do apologize because, like I said, we send the files to legal. A lot of times I find out that the file has had action in legal is when I run the reports for all the boards.
Okay, but for the purposes of licensure, whatever you want to say that, does the board get official notice of this, and how long is the license surrendered? It would seem to be interesting or important to know that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and which is why in the resolution notes I put to contact legal, so that perhaps at your next board meeting, the attorney from DCP who is assigned to the engineering board would be able to come to provide all of that information, especially with the surrendering of the license.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Paul Grabowski, staff attorney. Paulette Anand probably handled this, and she's not on right now. I am looking through our records here to see what we have on this case. Immediately surrender profession. I'm looking at the settlement agreement. So this might be more appropriate to address at a future meeting, but it does look at surrendered for, cannot apply for another year from the date of the approval of the agreement by the commissioner. And that looks like it was approved by the commissioner on December 6th of 2021.
Barbara, can you see if he tried to renew his license?
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Was there a license number affiliated with that settlement agreement? Did they put his license number on there?
It's not on the report.
Yeah, I have it. I have it right here.
It's 5824.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's an old license. He's not a young man, and he's also heavily involved in this discussion we're going to have with the Structural Engineering Coalition. He's a signature on the letter, although it dates back to 2013. He's heavily involved in the structural engineering license request. Okay, I guess it's some.
Excuse me, to answer Bob Doan's question, no, he has not attempted to renew, but there is a note in his credential of a voluntary surrender. So he wouldn't be able to renew anyway, so he has not.
I guess that answers my question too. So the board has been notified of the settlement and it's now, you know, available for you to see if it comes along again. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, that's an interesting resolution, but it's done and we don't need or have the right to know anymore. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right. Is there anything else, Danita or Cherry Joe or Paul?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman.
The only update I have, this is Paul Grabowski again. There was a final decision in order that went out on February 1st. The case for Joseph Troiosi, which was the benchmark line and grade case. So that should be all wrapped up. And the respondent has 15 days to file a reconsideration. So they're running out of time on that, and they have 45 days to file a Superior Court if they're going to do so. So far, no word on either of those. So that should be it.
Paul, on that one, you just said it's been again a settlement. But
No, that was a final decision in order by the board. So that one was a board decision that went out on February 1st.
That was one that you were involved with, Tony.
That was the surveying issue.
Correct.
Yes,
You were-
that's right.
Yes.
So does the board ever see that resolution? I mean, do
mean,
we ever know what became of that?
Yeah, well, there's a final decision in order. I don't know that it gets circulated amongst the whole board, but there is a board member who signed off on it. It looks like this was Al Regina is the signed off on this decision.
Okay, all right. The last question I would have is, why would that not be on this summary of the complaints?
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that because I run the reports in 2-month timeframes.
Okay,
So I would not be running that report until the end of the month of February, which would be March 1st, and you would see it next month.
all right. That makes sense, okay? All right, I was just making a couple of notes, okay. Makes sense. Any other questions or discussions? All right. Then, as is our custom, I think we can move to our surveying matters, which is one, as I can see, unless I missed one, which is a Class 8 exam for Jose Ruiz del Valle, reviewed by the land surveying members.
I've reviewed this and I make a motion for approval, Class 8, credit Part 1 of the applicant.
Second.
Thank you, Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing that motion carries. I think the next item that would involve all of our board members would be our review of the minutes from our January 11th meeting. Which again continues to note that we don't have any public members, but not much we can or have been doing about that. So is there a motion to
Mr. Chairman, I believe that Curtis was not at that meeting. I think
Right.
he was excused, so I think that should be amended on the,
Thank you.
so
Perfect. Thank you.
is that a motion to accept the minutes as amended with the omission of Curtis from the meeting on the January 11th?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Bob. Thank you, Richard. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And I see that we have a guest, Mr. Robert Zygmunt, whom we've seen before. And while everybody's here, I think it'd be important for everyone to listen, even though it's not a surveying matter. Just go through it for a few moments. So, Robert, if you'd want to make your presentation as to what you're concerned about at this time, more than happy to listen.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Robert Zygmunt. I'm a board member of the Structural Engineers Association in Connecticut, or SECON, and we represent about 175 structural engineers in the state. I'm also here with Tom DeBlasi, who's listening in, but I guess he's having some audio and video problems, so he's not going to be able to chime in. Kevin Chamberlain is also part of this committee. So I'm here to talk about the creation of the structural engineer endorsement for the professional engineer license. I've talked a couple times with you guys about this, maybe going back maybe 15 years. So we believe creating a separate structural engineering license would better protect the public by ensuring our most important buildings are designed by engineers who have passed the rigorous structural engineering professional engineers test and are maintaining a continuing education credit. Currently, there's 10 states that have some form of SE licensure. Georgia just got passed, I believe, last year, and there's many more other states in the process, and some are relatively close. So what are the reasons for creating this bill? So the practice of structural engineering is changing rapidly and becoming increasingly complex. Due to more and more research, we have an expanded knowledge of extreme load cases, such as seismic effects, wind loads, which has greatly increased the complexity of our building codes and standards. For example, maybe 10 years ago, we had one chapter on seismic design. The new ASCE 716 now has 11 chapters. So you can see how much more complex it's gotten. Education has, the semester hours are much less today than they were 20 years ago. Previously, a bachelor's in science and engineering required about 140 to 150 semester hours. Today, I understand you need about 124. Buildings today are becoming more and more complex. We're always constantly looking to optimize our structures. Cost of materials recently has skyrocketed. So now we're constantly pressured to reduce the tonnage on our projects. So we got to keep on pushing the limit, making our buildings more cost effective. For instance, maybe 5 years ago, the cost of steel was $3,000 a ton. Now it's double that. We're paying $6,000 a ton. Owners have a higher expectations for building performance. All these changes require an increase in knowledge and skill on the part of the structural engineer. In recognition of all these trends, about 10 years ago, the National Council of Engineers the NCEES, the National Council of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors, introduced a 16-hour structural engineer exam, since they felt that the typical 8-hour professional engineer's test was inadequate to test for structural engineering. So the biggest reason, in summary, for this proposed bill is we feel it's going to increase public life safety by ensuring that our most complex structures are designed by competent structural engineers. So I'll just quickly go over what's in the bill. The proposed bill is going to be a partial practice act. So like I was saying, it's just going to affect the most complex buildings. Currently, our building code and our state statutes already define what a threshold building is. So any building that falls in that category, we're going to require is designed by a structural engineer. That's only a small portion of the buildings out there, maybe 5%. We're going to define what a structural professional engineer is. That's going to be somebody that has taken and passed the 16-hour SE test, and they also have a minimum amount of continuing ed credits. We will open it up for a transition period. So typically it's 2 to 3 years, where anybody that has a Connecticut professional engineers test, they basically sign an affidavit and they get grandfathered in. Once that 2 to 3 year window has closed, the only way to get your structural engineer licensure would be to take the test. Then I mentioned the continuing education. Currently 42 states out there have continuing ed for professional engineers. I'm not saying to do it for all professional engineers. I'm just saying it just for the structural engineer licensure. You're going to be required to have 15 continuing ed credits a year. which is relatively easy to do nowadays. It's cheap, it's easy, it's not a big time commitment, and it's good to advance our profession. So we figure by raising the bar for design professions, it's going to better protect the public. I sent around a little PDF to Barbara. I hope that made its way around to everybody else. But I could pull that up and share my screen. Let's see if I can get this to work. We've only been doing this for a couple of years. So, okay, can anybody see my screen?
Yep, all
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so just kind of quick question and answers, commonly asked questions. We have several examples of buildings that recently have collapsed. Trying to focus in more on the Connecticut buildings. So Winter Storm 2010, 2011 is probably the most recent example of us having structural problems. There was a paper written by Mike O'Rourke maybe 5 years ago, where he went through and studied all the snow-related roof collapses in New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Tom de Blasi actually helped work on providing some of the data for that. And what was interesting in that report was when we had that snowstorm where they said 500 buildings had some roof problems, 375 of them either had a partial collapse or full collapse. So there's a widespread problem. And the interesting thing that came out of there was, I remember when that happened, people were questioning whether or not the building code was being unconservative. And this document really dove into that, looked at a bunch of case studies where a bunch of these engineers went out to sites and they measured the weight of the snow on the buildings. And what they found out was that in Connecticut, on average, the snow was no higher than 85% of what the building code said to design for. So in no way was this snowstorm exceeding the load that the building code was telling engineers to design for. So that kind of indicates that, you know, maybe there's an issue out there of people designing buildings inadequately. Continuing through here, got a little screenshot here. This kind of shows all the states in yellow or red that have a partial practice act or a full practice act. This is back in 2013. I believe many of you were on the board back then. I kind of reached out to the board here, and we kind of wrote so here's our original proposal for the structural engineer licensure. I remember the board at one time, you guys wanted to add some provisions into the statutes. I'm not sure if you ever got that cleaned up, but I remember we kind of worked with you to kind of change some of the statutes. And then here's just some letters from the local or the national organizations. There's a coalition called the Structural Engineer Licensure Coalition, which consists of the Structural Engineers Association of NCSEA, the CASE, which is the Council of American Structural Engineers, which Kevin Chamberlain is the president-elect for, and it also includes ASCE's Structural Engineer Institute. So all three of those organizations they all advocate for the structural engineer licensure. And, you know, basically here's kind of like their letters of endorsement. So I know kind of threw a lot at you quickly. Didn't know if anybody had any questions. I'm here to answer anything that anybody may have. And
Hi, Bob. It's John DeWolf. I have a couple of questions.
sure,
First of all, did other states allow grandfathering in when they put this in practice?
yes, I believe all the states did. That's one of the big issues. If you don't do that, you're going to get a lot of pushback from from current Connecticut engineers. So that was, we sent out a survey to our organization, and that was one of the big questions that they had. We don't want to take away anybody's livelihood. So it's not so much solving the problem right now. It's more kind of in, a couple years down the road that would be solving this problem. So just kind of easing our way into it.
So if I'm practicing environmental engineering, I could then become a structural engineer licensee?
Correct. You're going to have to sign an affidavit that basically says you're qualified to design structural engineering buildings.
Okay. And you list requirements for buildings in order to fall into this. Shouldn't it be if you meet any of those requirements, or it implies that you have to meet all of them?
No, it's just if you trigger any one of these 6
Does it
items
say
here.
that? No, I don't think it does. Which exceed the following limits would be required. Should be
Any one of,
any of the following limits.
just add that word, which exceed any one of the following.
The proposed.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I probably should clean up the verbiage here, but if you
Yeah.
read the state statute or the building code, it basically says if you exceed any one of these. So if your building's,
Okay.
5 stories high, now you trigger it.
Make sure you do that, because it
Sure.
might slip through.
Yep. No, that's a great comment. Thank you.
And just for my own interest, so you normally get a PE and then you take the 16-hour exam on top of that, or would the 16-hour exam replace the PE?
It would replace the PE.
It would replace it.
Yeah, some states require both right now. I believe only California is like that right now, where you got to take the PE first, and then you got to take a surveying test, then you got to take a seismic test, and then you got to take the 16-hour SE test. But in our state, we're trying to align with most of the other states. So 9 out of the 10 states, all they require is you taking the 16-hour test.
So you take the EIT and then follow it with the 16-hour.
Correct. And what we're seeing now is I'm trying to get all our younger engineers to take the SE test, and everybody says, well, why would I take a 16-hour test when I can take an 8-hour test? So nobody takes the 16-hour test. And it's really not good for a profession that people are shying away from taking the more rigorous test. I mean, to me, it just seems to make sense that if you're designing a complex building, you should be taking the test that's the more rigorous test that specializes on structural engineering.
I completely agree. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
Along those lines, John, you would clarify that you still want to follow the model law on the 4-year experience prior to taking the exam, would you not? Which leads from John's question was whether or not you need the PE underlying.
Yeah, so you still would need the same criteria in the statutes before you could sit for the test. But instead of taking
you would 4 years in our state right now, we want the 4 years experience following the basic degree, then the fundamentals, and then you take the SE.
Exactly. Yep. Same path, just taking a different test.
Bob, I've got a question. So the 16-hour SE test, does that include the 8 hours of the PE test plus an additional hours of structural focused? Or is it 16 hours of structural focus?
16 hours of structural focused. It's the first 8 hours is more like gravity loads, and then the other 8 hours is more of the lateral forces. So it's basically a 2-day test. You could break it up. You don't have to take it all at once. So you could take one now, take another one 6 months from now.
So I read these first couple pages in your handout, and the first paragraph, Bob, if you scroll up, talks about a separate SE license would be a specialty license and a subcategory of a Connecticut professional engineer license, about midway in that first paragraph.
Yeah.
So you talk about it being a separate subcategory, and then and just follow me for this for a minute. If you scroll down halfway down that page, if you aren't granted an SE license, that paragraph, the last sentence says, other than engineers who apply for an SE license through the transition process, you would not need a PE license prior to obtaining an SE license, which is what you just said. And then one more thing that caught on the next page, these three things don't seem to be aligned. The would I be able to stamp other disciplines? So it says, yes, an SE license would be equivalent to a PE license for other discipline drawings. So that's where I'm getting a little bit off track here. So that's why I asked the question about 16 hours of SE focus. But in this right here, you're saying they're taking 16 hours of SE focus, but you're allowing them to stamp other disciplines, which that doesn't make sense to me.
It does, and I agree with you. And that's what the purpose of the basic PE license would be, especially if you open up, as Rob pointed out in the first paragraph, that you're trying to make it a subset. I'd be happy if it was a distinct license over and above the they call it the depth and breadth. You got to show your breadth before you're able to sign other disciplines.
I agree. I think you should still go for the PE first. Because you do need the breadth.
Yeah, and that's, as I read this, Bob, it struck me as it was a specialty license above and beyond. And then as I read more, I was wondering, and I agree with John and Tony. It strikes me as it should be a specialty above and beyond.
Yeah, I agree also.
I concur too.
Chiming in from the surveyors, I concur with that as well.
So the support that the board is able to and would be willing, speaking for myself, is certainly recognizing the significance and the importance of the ability of a structural engineer would be fine. The legislation that you're proposing should, reference that, but I do agree that you should have that underlying breadth and depth of the PE exam. You can also add the recent collapse of something over here in Stanford to your list of a collapse, a structural collapse, which is another significant element. So everybody would be in support of it. Your job, your difficulty is making it, getting the support to get it changed in the legislature.
Which building are you referring to there?
Was there something over here in the south end of Stanford on a what I believe to be a building and land technology building in an apartment? Apparently, some overhanging patio or terrace above a garage collapsed onto the garage without injury, but it was recent. South end of Stanford, building and land technology building, I believe.
I just want to point out one thing in terms of the structural design isn't always the precipitating factor for a building to collapse. It could be lack of maintenance. It could be, the construction techniques utilized, not constructing it according to plans and specs. So, I don't think that the structural engineer should get, a bad rap that every time the building collapses, it's their fault. There's a lot of other circumstances that can cause a building to collapse. So, but I agree. I support the fact that, a structural engineer, is a specialty design area, and that it requires a significant amount of experience and, recognizing, the techniques and how, the whole building functions as a unit. But I also agree that you need the breadth, and I don't think that, taking an 8-hour PE exam would be a hardship, especially if you're a knowledgeable, structural engineer. You understand the entire concept of engineering, as a whole. So, passing that should not be a real hardship. And then all of a sudden to concentrate on your specialty, which is the structures. And I agree with that. But I did want to point out that, not all the buildings designed because of a design flaw. There are other factors that contribute to that.
Completely agree. And that's what that study found was a lot of the buildings were, like you said, maintenance issues, not cleaning drains getting frozen. But it did say there were some buildings where A lot of
Yep.
times engineers will remove braces in buildings. They'll build a new building up against an existing building without considering the snow drifts that you're going to cause on that lower building. And that's where some of these buildings did collapse from situations like that. But that's it.
I agree with that in terms of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if I did go forward with this bill as is, you would basically oppose it then, unless it was a separate structural engineer specialty license, you're saying?
Speaking for myself, Bob, I would, because I really believe the breadth is important. And here's an example. We get a lot of requests in the environmental area for people to get a PE, and they have, say, a biology or a chemistry undergraduate degree. They've gone on and got a 30 credit or so master's in environmental engineering. And we have been maintaining that it's not adequate to get a PE because there is no breadth. They know about environmental engineering, but they haven't had the breadth from the other related areas in, say, civil engineering. And by pushing this, where you can get this instead of a PE, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're saying a structural engineer is very narrowly focused, and it is a great license. It is, I think, essential, but we still want that breadth. So I don't think you should push this through saying it replaces a normal PE license.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate the comments.
Bob, I had one other comment. On the first page, you say applicant is an active member of the Structural Engineering Certification Board. I mean, I think being a member of a board and active participation doesn't strike me as something that would be a license requirement. Item 3 in the 3rd paragraph.
Actually, that the board has gone away this year. There's the SECB that no longer exists starting this year. So yeah, that was another way that you could get basically grandfathered in, is if you were a member of that board, but that board has gone away. So thank you for pointing that out. I gotta delete that.
And again, I think I think that, well, me being, a structural engineer, I support this this proposal, but again, I agree that it needs to be a supplemental license, not necessarily a standalone license. That you should have your professional engineering license initially, and then your structural engineer's license to supplement the professional engineer's license.
So
And I
what
think
everybody's saying is they agree with the California model.
Correct.
Do we need to say something as a group with a motion or something?
Well, Bob asked for that. Robert asked for that, would we oppose it in this current form? And I think that a motion by Al, to suggest having the underlying PE is really where we're heading from what I heard. Is that correct?
Yes,
You want to make a motion, Al?
I'll make that motion.
So that, if
I'll
it's clear,
second that.
Robert, I think the consensus of the board is that they should, an individual licensed as a structural engineer under the special discipline should have already proven qualifications through the passing of the FE and PE exam. And of course, the 4 years experience for the depth and breadth of underlying experience.
Let me, I guess, maybe look for a little more clarification. Say I'm only going to stamp structural engineering drawings. Can I just take the 16-hour test? And
No,
So you still want,
you need the breadth, Bob. That's, I think, what the board is telling you. We want to see the other license too.
okay.
A case in point, I guess, when we design our buildings, we design for mechanical systems, we design for, electrical systems, we're supporting equipment everywhere. And basically we should have at least a common knowledge of, what these other disciplines are doing and how it might affect our, designs for the support of their equipment. Is there going to be expansion of piping if they're running significant, lengths of pipe and under high pressures or high temperatures or temperature differentials? I guess, structural engineering design includes, I guess, utilitarian buildings that aren't necessarily buildings utilized by people, but, are mill buildings and other kind of, structural systems. So you just can't say that, we're going to be designing, office buildings all the time or auditoriums or schools. There's, a whole gambit of buildings. There's, pump stations, there's, sanitary structures that you need to do. So you needed the whole concept of, all these other engineering professions and how, some of their work might affect what you're designing to or designing for, what forces are associated with those systems.
Ironically, under the format of the PE exam, you have a module for structures anyway. You're going to be, demonstrating minimum competency in the engineering field by taking the regular PE exam, which has a module, with stress on structures. So I don't see that there's an unusual, unreasonable requirement to have the basic PE. So we'd be glad to put it in a letter to you if that would help. But I think that's where we're headed.
Okay, no, I was just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page here, and I didn't want to proceed with something that you guys were going to oppose, and trying to work with you.
I think it's pretty clear we all support the idea of getting the 16-hour exam in order to do more involved structure design.
Excellent. Okay, appreciate it.
So I'll put a motion on the table, which is fairly loosely worded right now, but the gist of it is to support the structural engineering discipline license in the state of Connecticut over and above the PE that follows the model law of NCEES, which includes experience after education and passing of the 2 exams as a demonstration of minimum competency for the depth and breadth of the license.
Yeah, I'll make the motion as amended, Tony, as you just stated it.
And I'll amend my second for that.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm trying to get back into the meeting somehow. I just blanked out here. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay.
Okay, Tony? Tony?
Yes.
When you get to item A2, which is the next one, which is the information from the DOT, we do have 3 representatives from the DOT that are joining us. Bill Pratt, Matt Calkins, and Rob Barricott.
Yes, that's good. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, I just put them. Yeah, they're on now with us on.
All right. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Morning, everybody.
My cameras.
We do have your letter asking us if we had any objection as a board to using DocuSign. We've had several requests over the recent years of individuals asking how best to protect themselves and use a common system. So certainly if the state's using DocuSign, you set the pattern, and I can't imagine anybody would have an objection to that, but if you want to expand on that, please do.
Sure. So Actually, we've been using your solution for quite a long time. Actually, we visited you guys when we started digital signing back in 2010 and kind of helped you out. And I don't know if you remember us, but we did some demos for you.
Yeah.
And, show you how we do that. And we certainly enjoy the rigor that you guys put in the regulations. And we certainly understand, the importance of having those keys on you. This was something that our chief engineer had requested. I'm going to turn off my video because it's flashing for me. Is it flashing for you guys? It's kind of bothering me.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm just going to turn it off. So we certainly understand, like I said, the rigor in the security that you guys put in place. It's really good. This is just something that our chief engineer had asked us to run by you guys. If anyone has approached you regarding the DocuSign solution. Now that is a totally, it's a different solution. It doesn't require keys. It requires you to submit your document that you want signed up into their website, and that's how they kind of validate your, or authenticate yourself. And that's it. We just wanted to ask if you guys thought about that or had any question or had any, I guess, recent requests and what your position was on that.
From my position, I'm totally in favor of it because like I said, recently we've had inquiries as to how to do this. And I think that it's proven that the keys are difficult because there would be project oriented, if I'm not mistaken, and they are difficult to create and use for an individual project. Do you have any input on that? Anybody, Rob? You're probably more involved in that kind of, daily exchange of information. And I think the idea here is that we all need to be protected on what we convey or transmit or exchange. And therefore, having a signature like DocuSign, I think would be something in the right direction. Fairly simple, one-sided, and recognized. Is that the way you feel out of that, Bill? Is that a summary that makes sense?
Yeah, and actually, I'm a little surprised, which that's good news that you guys are looking, at that. We'll call it a progressive, not progressive so much, but it is an easier thing to do, especially for an agency like ours. There's a lot of signing going on, not just engineering signing, but other documents as well, contracts, things like that, and that certainly makes that easier. So we're just poking you to see about that. Now we have some other challenges we face with that DocuSign. We use an application called Bluebeam. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's it's a PDF tool that I think we all use in the industry, and that really is important to developing our contract plans. That Bluebeam is very powerful. It allows us to place watermarks on all the sheets of our PE stamp and do all kinds of 11th hour development of our contract drawings. So we actually met with DocuSign and we said, we wouldn't be able to use it for signing plans until it worked within the Bluebeam environment, because without Bluebeam, we can't digitally sign the way we do today because of, it's complex for us with all the consultants that we have working for us, right? Similar discussions for what Robert had earlier. We have structural engineers, that are required to sign a little bit differently, right, than a highway designer because, that's a structure. So Rob Barricade, I see his hands up, and he's going to add to this a little bit. So this is a good discussion. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you for the board for giving us time to talk. So we're here, as Bill said, Scott Hill, the chief engineer, reached out to Barbara in regards to this. So a couple things I just want to, bring to light. It's good that we're open to different types of signature, electronic signature formats for sure. But what we were relying on was the policy that's currently out there for using of electronic signature. And if I can share my screen with you, I can bring that up just so everybody's on the same page, because I want to be clear about what's required in regards to be able to digitally sign. Let me just see if I can I share my screen?
While you're doing that, I think that, I know you're going to pull up the 2010 declaratory ruling probably, right?
I would think so, yes. Is this it?
I think we have to go back to 2010 and recognize that it was new.
Correct.
We had to find a way to help each other. And now
Agreed.
that the technology and the daily exchange of information minute by minute has got to be recognized. And so,
yep, I couldn't agree with you more. So good, we are on the same page. But the way the way I was reading it is that the digital signatures key are unique to licensee, of course. The digital signature keys can be verified and trusted third party for some or other approved process belonging to the license, which is what DocuSign does by allowing the person signing it to upload it to their cloud, if you will. The private key used for signing electronics is under the licensee's direct and exclusive control. So that's the only one that I was kind of having issues with. Currently, we use Global Sign. I have a key like this. It goes into my USB drive and I sign with it, right? Now, if I give this key, like I give a key to a car to somebody, they can drive my car, of course, right? They can sign for me. The DocuSign, the way they do it, they have the third party review by sending it through email. So if they get it in their email, that's good enough for them as far as like, I sent it to so-and-so at ct.gov or whatever for signature. Now, could other people have access to your email? Yeah, they could technically, right? If sometimes we give access to our admins or whoever the case may be that, can go in there and technically sign. So we just wanted to make sure that the individual keys that are given can now be substituted for through an email type of a situation. That was the only thing I was kind of concerned with. This is under control of me right now versus my email that may or may not be, which is another, I guess, potential breach of security or that type of thing. You know what I mean?
But
so
from a practical standpoint, if I send a document to you and I put my DocuSign signature on it and you receive it, I have proof that that's what I sent. Is that
Correct.
not the protection we need? Or am I missing something drastic?
Yeah, yes, you do have proof that through your email that you sent it to me, and through my email I signed it, or you signed it first and I signed it second. Because there are some documents that require multiple signatures, of course, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
you need this first person to sign it, the second person to sign it, and a third person to sign it.
And then I get the whole package back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that what we're hearing, what our chief engineer wants to hear is that the board is open to allowing something like DocuSign that doesn't require a specific key holder to have to use as potential option through email or through uploading it to their cloud.
Yes.
Okay.
I would personally, I would say that if we're working with, well, let's start. We're part of the state in some way or other as the board, and you are the state engineering department. If a standard is being set, then it should come out of that. You make state standards and we all follow them in the civil aspect. We're speaking for myself. So having that standard is comfortable for you as the state, then we can follow, and it'll solve a few problems for individuals who wonder what to do with their signatures now.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of daylight a couple things real quick. So we, in looking at those documents and where they get stored, the current signing solution seems to be a little more robust, where if I sign a document and everything is on the cloud these days, right? There's no more, everything gets stored there. That's what we're doing anyways. And our current, when our current contract plans are out on SharePoint, let's say, and maybe I send a link to you guys to go look at them, you'd be able to identify who signed that document through the certification or a key that's that's with the document itself. So you would see William Pratt PE had signed this and a date. Whereas the DocuSign is not as clear. I'm just, I just want to let you guys know that it's a little different because I believe that document's being held in the DocuSign environment. So we're, I know we're kind of going both ways here. We certainly want the ability to do DocuSign in the future, but we want to make sure that you guys are aware of the differences, right? And there is quite a difference. And if I went to that DSS, that NITS website there and looked at the digital signature standard, and boy, that's really a rigorous digital standard, which is a good thing. So we're not asking for an answer right now. We were just requesting information on it, and thank you for informing us that. And I think what we'll do is take this back and say that there is options here to do this. That's what it sounds like. And maybe we could make another presentation to you in the future to say, hey, this is one, with the DocuSign. This is one with the current way we sign. Maybe that may be good for us to all look at it and, try to understand it. How's that sound?
I think it sounds very good because you're anticipating potential problems from your large scale exchange of documents. So if you can troubleshoot and figure out a system that is safe as may be, then that would be helpful for the rest of us.
Yeah. And one last thing to kind of point out too, Matt just pointed out this in the chat. We want to distinguish the differences between signing in-house plans, which we do as managers and as PEs in a department, versus signing of plans by consultants for the department. Okay, as owners, we want to make sure that the how should I say it? The PEs that work for the department that end up signing plans are covered by the umbrella of the insurance that the state holds because they're paying for our PEs. On the consultant side, it's the individual or the firm that holds that PE that's being responsible. So we want to make sure we're able to tie those signatories, if you will, back to the responsible party for that consultant, if you will.
Rob, we had that discussion in our small office yesterday about along those same lines, is that I put together the project and I need an electrical engineer and a structural engineer and a soils engineer. They all are committed to me by their signature on the documents and plans that they provide to us. So we need to, if that's the process of signing, I have to be able to rely on that as a digital signature. They can't say it was changed without my knowledge. No, this is what you sent. That's what I'm relying on. I will sign the overall package, but you are fully responsible for your component.
Right.
However, that gets adjudicated in the end, but
sure.
And that's no different from you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Make the suggestion that you end up on a response with backup and storage, how you intend to do that, both of those.
Well, again, that's where kind of my team comes in. That we work in. We're the like I said, we're the ones who introduced this back 10 years ago to you guys, and it's been a great thing for us. Along with that, our contract documents evolved. They went from one package of documents into many subsets of highway sheets, traffic sheets, structural sheets. You know what I mean? So the contract gets assembled much easier now. But I just wanted to say too, we wouldn't jump right over to DocuSign because again, we need them to work in Bluebeam where we assemble these things. That's where we put these contracts together. And we're still a little bit ways away from doing that. But good question from Al there is again, what is what is a set of contract plans going to look like that we store in our SharePoint environment that's signed the way the regs say today? And what is it going to look like for a DocuSign set? Is someone going to be able, is an attorney going to be able to look at that contract, those contract plans, and identify who signed it right away? So, you know, again, I think there's some stuff in here that we all want to protect. And right now, you know, it's rigorous and well done, but there's, you know, it's a little bit of a chore, especially on bigger projects. So I think we want to take this information back and kick it around a little bit and see how we want to do things going forward, and then get back to you guys.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish the differences if there are any differences, and then we can come back and but this will be good news to our chief engineer, because I think he was on board with wanting to use different a DocuSign versus global sign, which is what we're using today. Money purposes and ease of it use, and but now we just have to kind of look at the technical hurdles, electronic technical hurdles that we need to go through to implement that, if that's the direction he wants to go, and then we can come back and report back to you on that.
We might even, Robbie, want to check with our attorneys a little bit on this, you know.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, we appreciate the time.
Yep.
Thank you all, and we'll certainly get back to you guys with some findings, and you know, just kind of a show and tell of what one looks like versus the other. And
Appreciate it. Very informative, very helpful, especially on the line of trying to set a standard that we can apply to various size projects and clientele.
Yeah,
right.
And one other thing we did, actually, when we talked to the DocuSign rep to see if we can do it, we did ask him to survey and or let us know what other states are doing.
Good.
So hopefully that information will help also.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the time. Thank you,
Thanks
Barbara.
for the time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. So that was all very good and very informative and very helpful. I don't know if there are any more surveying issues. If
Hey, Tony, before you go on, I'm not super familiar with DocuSign, but I appreciate what you just said in that last sentence about creating a standard that applies to all size firms. My one question with this is the authentication of the signature via email? And I ask that question because if, let's say there's a small firm and there's a PE on staff and that PE leaves, but there's a email address retained at that firm, you know, you could have a firm that could continue to use that email address, you know, because the firm controls that email address, not the individual. Does DocuSign open themselves up to, let's say, that type of fraudulent use?
Well, certainly it would seem that the firm has to be aware of who was using it. I know that in my limited use of DocuSign, it's been primarily me as the signer, as I submit to the receiver, and I'm covering myself, but also they're being covered because they have my signature on it. It doesn't involve a third party, so-called, which was very cumbersome because it appeared as time went on that you have to have that set up for every job, you know, and you may have 6 jobs going at once. I just think it was very cumbersome. And when Bill Gill set that process or that declaratory ruling up, he was really doing, making a summary of what was available to us at the time and how best to help the individual protect themselves against abuse or fraud or mismanagement. So I think that it's good if the state group, being a large user, if you will, of complex projects, more so than what I have, if you set the standard, then we can follow, and it's easier to disseminate that. Just follow this procedure and we'll all be okay. It's the biggest exposure that anyone would have, you know. when you, Rob, you received plans of great scale, complex plans. And I think what's his name, Bill Pratt said, and what Al questioned is, what does the final product look like? But certainly recognizing along the way, everybody that's contributing to that development has to be responsible. We all understand that. And yet the state, let's say they're the top of the pyramid right now, they have to make sure that the electrical fits inside the roadway right away or whatever. Somebody ultimately has a clearinghouse element. But so they are ultimately responsible, but everybody down the chain is also responsible. Therefore, their signature has to have value. I didn't know about the Bluebeam and I didn't think about that previously, but signing is one thing, working it into the whole packaging of the contract, which I haven't had that experience. So I'm real weak on that. Therefore, if the state develops how you integrate the signature with the final package, I think that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, it sounded like DocuSign wasn't communicating with Bluebeam yet.
Yeah,
which
but I
would expect that to happen.
To think about that.
Yeah, which I would expect to happen. I mean, we use Bluebeam everywhere. That has become super common. So
just give me 3 sentences or less of how Bluebeam works. It's a means of collecting all of the drawings in a PDF format.
Correct. I mean, Bluebeam is kind of like, we're using it instead of Adobe Reader. It's just more powerful. It's better. So you can aggregate documents, in any format, bring them into Bluebeam and read them. And then on top of that, you can mark up any document. You can add writing, pictures. You can add anything to those documents in Bluebeam. So, so basically Bluebeam, it puts a picture on your screen that you could do whatever you want to it.
You can erase it too if you wanted to.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Problem.
So you can erase things if you want to too.
100%.
But isn't that the problem? When you get that, when does it become final? When the state says, I got everything done the way I want it, I commented on your drawing, you revise, you send back. So,
there is a way to protect your drawings. Once you get into a certain format, you can protect it where nobody can write or modify or do anything to it.
But that would appear to be, in this case, the state says, okay, no more revisions, because they'll go on forever. So
correct.
Again, if you're doing Bluebeam, if that's the case, and you can edit, when does your editing stop to the protection of the guy who first sent it to you?
Well, and that goes back to the stamping. I mean, if you had a physical stamp, when you're happy with the document, you stamp it and it's memorialized at that point in time. But when you digitally stamp it, in theory, you should be digitally stamping it at that point in time too. In theory, as long as you can digitally mark that point in time.
Yeah, I believe once you digitally stamp it, you can no longer modify it or nobody else can modify it.
Well, that's the point. I sent it to the state, and they said, no, we have a problem because the interchange moved 4 feet. So now I have to move my light stanchion. I send it back. Okay, I signed it. You told me what to do. You're done. Now it's yours. At some point, you're right. It has to stop. You can't change my drawing and say, oh, I moved the light pole for you.
Yeah, at that point, there's a restamp.
There's a what?
A restamping. If you change the design, it's got to be certified, restamped.
Well, I think it can be worked out. Again, if the state understands the way the Bluebeam works with their contracts, and Rob has the same understanding of it. Again, I'm way at a disadvantage on Bluebeam. But if it becomes part of a process of signature that involves DocuSign, I don't know how we would be opposed to it. But you guys who use both on a daily basis in intense projects have to be comfortable with that, especially if in Bluebeam you can edit somebody else's plan.
Well, I think it comes back to what Al said. There has to be the ability to identify who's responsible for everything, and
Okay, that was very informative, I thought. And I was surprised, if I may go back just one item, I was surprised at the reluctance of what's his name? I'm sorry, drawing a blank on names.
Zygmunt.
Structural guy.
Bob Zygmunt.
No, from the SEC.
Oh, Bob Zygmunt.
Zygmunt, yeah. I was surprised at his reluctance to include the basic PE.
Yeah, so was I.
That was a total miss on their part.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't make, that didn't make any sense at all.
No, it did not.
And in the way they've got it set up, someone's got to bear the cost of two different engineers.
So it'd be, I hope they come back with another issue. He looked forlorn when we said that, but okay, it was just an observation that I thought was surprising. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes.
Ken, Kurt, I think Kurt probably already left anyway. I don't see him, but Bob and Ken, we appreciate your effort today, and closing the surveying portion of the meeting, we'll move on to our regular agenda.
All right, thank you. We'll see you in the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Good month.
So we've taken care of our correspondence, which moves us over to the regular agenda items. I reviewed the first three applicants for Class 1 exam credit part 1, Bauer, Hart, Mendoza, and Ortega. I found them all to be in accordance with our regulations, so I would accept a motion to accept my recommendation.
So move.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thanks a lot, Richard. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
So I will go ahead and move that Hughes and Mackin be
Yep.
approved for Class 1 exam credit part 1.
Second,
A second.
thanks, Al. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. We have two more applicants, Nick Granata and Travis Test, reviewed by Bob Doan.
Nick Granata almost got me. He has 3 years, 7 months, and he lists a master's, but he doesn't get the master's until June of 2023. So we have to back up, and so I vote that a no on Nicholas, Granata Nicholas Granata, because he only has 3 years, 7 months experience.
Okay, is there a second to that motion to deny Nick Granata at this time due to
Second.
lack of experience? Thanks,
Second.
John. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to deny Nick Granata at this time to take the exam due to lack of experience following degree, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. How about Travis Test?
I make a motion to approve Travis Test.
A second.
Thanks, Al. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve Travis Test for Class 1 credit part 1, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
I see there, he's going to take both the PE exam and SE exam?
Yes.
Okay. Which is what we believe in.
Yep. All right. Next group of applicants was the Class 4 reciprocity. I reviewed the first group. I spoke to Barbara. There was these applications, two of them for Lay, L-E-Y-E, and Limoué, L-I-M-O-U-E-E. Experience lapsed or ended back in late 2020. So my recommendation is to recommend approval of all of the 7 applicants, Doak through McDaniel, with the contingency that Leahy and Limoe provide just an update of the application, of the experience for the application. Apparently, Barbara, they were filed way back and somehow they just moved forward to now. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, unfortunately, they'll send their NCS record ahead of time and then forget to file the application. So that's what happened here. Their applications are.
Oh, it's a function of the NCWS. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. So that's what happened.
Okay. So is there a motion to accept my recommendation to approve with the condition that a contingency that Leahy and Limoe update their experience through NCWS?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Is a second? Thanks, Bob. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Rob Lewandowski reviewed the next group of applicants for Class 4, Avarasala through Welsh on page 3.
I reviewed them all. 3 of them were non-model law. Swami Afasarala, Musa Kalisa, and Henry Perez. All 3 of them were non-model law because of foreign degrees. Swami's degree was evaluated and found to be short 4 credits in general education. But that was just their undergraduate degree. And in addition, they had a master's degree from the University of Florida on top of it. So I was okay with that. Musa Kalisa and Henry Perez both had foreign degrees that were deemed equivalent. And then in addition, they both had master's degrees from the United States universities. So the rest of them are all model law with good experience. So I recommend them all for approval.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Al. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And John DeWolf reviewed Arcea on page 3 and Begley through Trujillo on page 4 for Class 4 reciprocity.
I move approval.
Second. Thank you, Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Richard reviewed Anzuini through Venture on page 4 of our regular agenda for Class 4 reciprocity.
I'll make a motion that we approve all applicants. All of them were model law except Mr. Taulan Mahmouti, who has a degree from Canada, which was deemed equivalent. So, and everybody was in good standing. So I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rob. Which was the one that you said was I couldn't.
Taulan Mahmouti.
Oh, okay. Taulan Mahmoudi. Okay. All right.
Yeah, he was from Canada.
All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Excuse me. And the Bob Doan reviewed Gelfand through Stanford for Class 4 on page 4.
I make a motion to approve the entire group. And I'd like to note that Richard Herman is a model law engineer and also a model law structural engineer. I've never seen NCEES do an MLSC as well as an MLE.
Huh.
That means he was licensed where, in Illinois?
No, it's California.
Oh, California, okay. All right, there's a motion to approve everyone Galpen through Stanford. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And we have a group of licensees for Class 9 license. They range from Arif through Roberts on page 4 and Rufino through Tadif on page 5. A variety of universities with a concentration of UConn, which is good. Their motion to approve.
So move.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Rob. Robert. Bob. Are you a Bob or a Robert? What are you?
Whatever. Bob.
Bob. All those in favor say aye.
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 It depends on where I am, Tony.
Yeah, if you're home, you're what? Robert?
Rob. It's Rob at home.
Then our very efficient, invaluable, polite, patient administrator has reviewed the following applicants for the corporate practice of professional engineering. RPA Associates Inc., Telemon Tower Engineering PLLC, United Capital Engineering LLC, Victor Holdings Inc. for approval. Is there a motion to accept her recommendation?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Robert.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Richard. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries.
Thank
I only
you,
had one
Barbara.
question after the fact. Victor Holdings Inc. doing business as Whitman, just Whitman?
Yep.
Why bother? Why not be Whitman from the beginning? I'll never understand that.
I know.
We had one request for reinstatement by Mr. Joseph Mangaluzzi. He's been working somewhere else. And Bob Doan reviewed the application.
Yep, I reviewed the reinstatement. Everything's in order, so I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rob.
He
Any
sent a
discussion?
100-page application in or something.
How much? 100?
I don't know how many pages. I've lost track. It's like, all I needed was the the notarized letter and the certification that he was licensed.
All those in favor of the motion to approve? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries. And we did have a short supplemental agenda. Excuse me. Rob Lewandowski reviewed Mr. Ashok Rajan.
Yeah, he's a model law with good experience, straightforward application. I recommend approval.
I'll second.
Thanks, Al. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? John DeWolf reviewed Mark Macon.
I recommend approval.
Second.
Thanks, Robert. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Richard reviewed Eric Dickinson for class 4.
He was a model law and he has 23 plus years of experience, and I recommend approval.
I'll second.
Thanks, Al. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Then we had Blair Robinson reviewed by Bob Doan. We were tabled, I guess, subject to verification of the FE. Bob has reviewed it.
I make a motion to approve Robinson Blair. And I'm not going to say his first name. See ya. With verification of the FE from California.
So both.
For both.
Yep. I'll second.
Thanks, Rob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Tony, can I add Jason Montagno to the agenda? We tabled him because he did not properly fill out his experience record.
Yeah.
And I have, thank you for pursuing this, Barbara. He finally filled it out correctly. And he has the appropriate experience, so I can't even remember what category he was in.
Permit class 1, credit part 1.
Okay, permit, class 1 credit part 1.
We're adding
Motion
Montagno
to
that.
approve.
I'll second.
All right, wait a minute. I'm all confused. Did we get through Blair and Zaya?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. So now we're on to Joseph Montagno. Okay.
yes,
All right, so the motion to approve.
yes.
And the second was?
Me.
Al,
Al
thank you,
Pacino.
Al. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none. I mean, any opposed? Getting punchy here.
Thank you, Tony.
Hearing none. Motion carried. Sorry about that. I got sidetracked, I guess.
That was my fault.
Well, when you said you couldn't pronounce Zia's name, it threw me off.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
got
we had one
lost.
more reinstatement for Mr. Robert Freud.
And I
Richard,
did
please
review that. He had the proper documentation and the notarized letter that he did not sign and seal any drawings, and he was registered in New Jersey during the time that his license had lapsed. So I'll make a motion that we approve Mr. Robert Freud for reinstatement.
Second.
Second,
Thanks, Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And we reviewed our bi-monthly report. And I think that completes our agenda. Is there any other new business that we need to discuss? If not,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you, Al.
Barbara, I'm happy that you're staying.
For a little bit.
I'm happy that you're staying. I didn't hear anything, so I just wanted to mention that.
have you postponed it, Barbara?
Just a little bit. I have it till June 30th, July 1st. So.
All right. Well, we look forward to interacting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Barbara.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
see ya.
Thank you.
Okay.